Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the Steampunk Desperado channel. Today's topic is artificial intelligence, godsend or menace. So, in other words, it's less about science fiction and fantasy and more about science fact. But I think that most sci-fi fans will find this interesting. That's because my topic, AI, is something that is very much in the news, very much controversial, and something I know a bit about from my own experience. Will this technology usher in a utopian society, or will it end all life on Earth, as some people are predicting? You may have heard about some of the big controversies in the writing community surrounding AI. The big fuss and bother derailed NaNoWriMo completely, at least the organization, despite the fact that there were worse allegations, such as about grooming, that for whatever reason did not end it. It's also bedeviled the recent Worldcon. It has tanked the career of a popular YA writer who was caught leaving a AI prompt in her novel. Oh no. A lot of people, in particular the progressive types that dominate the writing community, as we call it, seem to view AI as the worst thing in the world. The devil, Satan. First commandment, thou shalt not use AI in creative endeavors in any way, shape, or form. Second commandment, thou shalt not use AI to process people's biographical information. It's the devil, remember? And it's the seed of Skynet, and it's going to destroy us all. Or is it? First of all, what is AI? So-called artificial intelligence. A lot of us sci-fi writers, myself included, have written about AIs to become self-aware, just like human beings, but without bodies, usually without bodies. We do that because it's a fascinating notion to speculate about, and it goes all the way back to 2001 with Arthur C. Clarke, many years ago. Who knows what will happen in the future? I mean, I suppose it's possible. But if you look at the state of AI currently, it's kind of hard to believe that that could ever happen. I don't know. Full disclosure, although I am not an AI expert, I have made extensive use of the technology in my day job, which is basically software systems for video surveillance and security. Yes, Big Brother, I'm sorry to say, but a lot of folks will agree that the surveillance that we do, projects that my employer takes on, help protect our border and critical facilities such as airports, and therefore it's necessary. Perhaps, unfortunately, but it is necessary. In a lot of cases, this is for the protection of the potential intruders. I mean, you don't want anybody wandering onto a runway. That would be bad. We don't want mentally deranged people going down the wrong way of a freeway. That's another use for AI that's cropped up in this world. On a completely different note, I and my fellow developers do use AI in our work as well. And I personally use it to write sample code for very specific tasks. It's often flawed, usually has bugs, but it gets me started. And then I can take this, insert it into the rest, and it's only a very small part of the job, but it does actually help get past a lot of the research. And it is really no different than going to a site such as Stack Overflow, and you code monkeys out there will know that one, that has all these examples. You know, how do I do this? Well, this is what I do. And so you just grab it and plop it in your code, and hopefully it works. The unfortunate thing is that the people who actually provided these solutions don't get the credit. I mean, it's all been scraped and aggregated, and that is one of the primary problems that I see about AI. It's not so much that it exists, that it's sinister. It's more like, it's removing the ability of people to say, I want to make my name by providing solutions. No, that steals the solution from you and presents it anonymously, unfortunately. Now, as far as these so-called large language models like ChatGPT, Grok, and DeepSeek, they're essentially a really huge encyclopedia combined with a very good search engine. Is there a danger of AI taking jobs from humans? Yes, I think especially the simplest ones. But the technology has serious limitations, which I believe will continue for some time. And regarding self-driving vehicles, for example, I think it's something that they absolutely should not be doing at this juncture. I don't think it's ready. A little too dangerous. Now, people are bad drivers, true, but at least we can be held accountable, unlike these giant corporations. Now, I don't believe the Skynet is ever going to happen. And even so, there's a very good novel based on the premise called Control Alt Revolt. I'll give a little information on that. And I have to mention that because feminist editors derailed that book because something in the premise really offended them. And so I'm recommending this as kind of an aside. I do strongly disagree with the notion that AI is inherently wiser or more capable than any human being. I personally have only a vague understanding of how AI works, so I'm not going to go into it here. To an experienced developer like me, AI models are a black box. To create these models, particularly in image recognition, which is what I tend to deal with, it requires human assistance. We input hundreds of images and videos with people in them, and we have to tell the model, this is a human, and not this fire hydrant is not a human, that kind of thing. After thousands of examples, it gets pretty good at guessing, and it's what it is, guessing where the human is. Which kind of reminds me of the Monty Python sketch, Spot the Loony, as though it's spotting the human. Still, it can make mistakes. If you've got a deer facing the camera, well, there's a head, there's two legs that you can see, and the model might just say, that's a human. I have a 50% possibility that's a human, that kind of thing. And if the image is fuzzy or difficult for a human to interpret, well, it's also difficult for the AI, unless there's other image processing done in the meantime, which would also make it easier for us to see it, right? Now, the advantage of AI is that it never sleeps, that it can't be distracted, and you don't need to pay it to be watching. And again, I strongly disagree with the idea that it's better than a human observer. It's just different. One of the things I found interesting, one of the interesting controversies I've heard lately, was the people from OpenAI, who basically have ChatGPT, they accused the Chinese of stealing their ideas for their open source version called DeepSeek. But the entire ChatGPT product is essentially stolen IP. I mean, it's been consolidating other people's information, some of it free and some of it probably not so free. I have to agree with AI's most vehement opponents that what these LMs do is a form of automated plagiarism. That doesn't mean that I think these models should be banned. As with nuclear energy, the genie is out of the bottle. What we need is some way of paying the people whose creative input goes into creating the data on these platforms. Even if it's a few $100s a year, it's something, and they ought to be responsible in that way. Perhaps something akin to what the music industry does when some song gets played on the radio. You know, your code, your information gets scanned, and therefore you get a royalty. Secondly, it should be easy and straightforward for people to find the source of information used to generate AI-based queries. In fact, it should be a feature. Check out the sources. And I suppose I can query what your sources are, but it's not in the forefront, and it should be, because you have to double check these, because AI does make mistakes. Now, I've often caught ChatGPT making mistakes in topics that I know. I know, like history of flags is one of those nerdy things I know about, and it actually told me something that was patently false, that the East India Company's flag was not the same as the original colonial revolutionary flag, but it was. My question was why, and it says no, it wasn't. I said yes, it was. So anyway, because I know these, I can catch the problems. But if you don't know something, you can't really trust AI, at least at this point. Now, finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need strong protections against AIs incorporating people's personal information. And I shudder to think how much we have freely given away to social media companies. Now, this is not the protected IP, such as the social security numbers, but it is our personal information. We've entered our photos and our interests, likes and dislikes, political opinions. We've entered those in, not thinking that they're going to be just aggregated in this huge database which some sinister person can search. And that is, I think, why the WorldCon writers got so upset. Shaming people for using available tools is a bit like punishing a dog for eating garbage. It's something people do, it's something dogs do. The dog's only for following its nature. It's people who leave the garbage lying around that need to be disciplined, need to change their habits. So a similar thing needs to happen here. Much of what we've done with AI so far is to offload tedious, labor-intensive processes to a computer that won't get bored or fall asleep. Anywhere human safety is concerned, I think we need to keep humans in the loop. The most distressing thing occurs when AI threatens to displace humans for the more interesting jobs like the creative ones. Already we see a pervasive use of AI generated images all over the internet. I myself use them in my videos. If I could draw, I would do sketches instead. For any serious purpose, such as book covers or illustrations, I do commission a human. I want what I want, and I want something that I really own. The problem occurs when profiteering a-holes, I don't know what else to call them, use AI to create images and write stories and music and dishonestly pretend they've done it themselves and to make a fast buck. And even when they have to label it, a lot of it is basically crap. And AI art, unless you give it a lot of direction, is mediocre at best and often really nonsensical. Anyway, dishonest profit seekers have gummed up the system so much that a lot of publishers, a lot of fictional publishers, have stopped accepting unsolicited submissions. Enough human generated fiction is trash without throwing AI into the mix. There definitely needs to be full disclosure of AI generated content. And I know a lot of platforms such as YouTube do mandate that, and I agree with that. But it's a gray area because I use it in proofreading my books, but I don't think that qualifies as AI generated. I used it. And about half the time, anyway, when I'm using an AI proofreader, half the time I say, no, that suggestion's stupid. Because basically, they want all of your work to be like a bland and homogeneous corporate report. My work, especially not the steampunk, it's supposed to be colorful. It's supposed to be old-timey. It's supposed to be convoluted and fun. You're not supposed to drop all the quirks of human dialogue. Another thing that's interesting is that supposedly AI generated work is not copyrightable, and I think that's good. According to ChatGPT, that's the case, and depending upon the jurisdiction, and of course, see, I consulted the devil here. Human guided or edited AI work is potentially copyrightable, but only the human contributed parts. How have you determined that? Now, I think this leads to people doing the very most minimum they have to do and then claiming they edited the whole thing. So, unfortunately, I don't know if this does us much good. Finally, there's the problem of data contamination. What happens when an AI model trains on AI generated information? This is more serious than people realize, and it's probably the real reason why they force you to designate your content as AI generated, because it's more so than consumer protection. It's like AI is training on AI generated output. It's a thing called recursion, and this can amplify any mistakes or errors in the data to the point where AIs are essentially hallucinating. It's dropped a couple tabs of acid and it's hallucinating. I'd say it's more akin, though, to dreams. Dreams process all this unassimilated data in your mind, and it's like this AI has fallen asleep and it's dreaming. All of these things that obsessed it are coming up again and again in symbolic fashion. It also means that the data and the answers it gives will accentuate the most common opinions, which is already a problem. It's already a problem that it tells you the accepted answer, even if the accepted answer is wrong, because garbage in, garbage out, as we say. A lot of the internet is influenced by major corporations, by government propaganda, and so on. And it kind of marginalizes any dissident or contrary ideas. which may be what the most sinister forces out there would prefer. So, as you can see, it's a very complicated topic. There's a lot to it. And I hope I've helped to shed a little bit of light on it and to entertain you a bit in the process. I've tried to give you the 10,000-foot overview. Now, please like and subscribe. Please tell me what you think about this in the comments. Do you have experience with AI, perhaps in your jobs and so forth? Also, check out my works on Amazon. The links are in there in the description, including my brand new release, Hunter's Wager, a cyberpunk fairy tale. Check that out. I think it's a lot of fun, a little violent, but it's for people who like cyberpunk, and that's what cyberpunk is, right? For now, this is Steampunk Desperado saying adios, amigos, from the Steampunk Desperado channel, where the past meets the future and the present is extraordinary.